we decided to go across the country and find the most resilient entrepreneurs who strive to continue to succeed and disrupt in every industry that they are in. So welcome to the Disruptor Network.
Welcome back to the Disruptors Network podcast. We have another special episode with a special guest. I'd like to say friend of the show. She's also going to be one of the stars on the Disruptors Network docuseries season 2. She's been on the podcast before. She's a friend. Cassandra Worthy, welcome back.
What it do, Ralph?
You're the best.
So glad to be here.
You have the best energy. And I was actually, I was doing some updated research on like stuff you've done recently and podcast. And I wanted to start off by saying you're so comfortable in your own skin and it kind of comes through everything you do. So that's a really big asset. And I just kind of wanted to start off with that compliment that you're very authentically you. And that's what I like about you most.
Thank you. It's been a journey, but thank you. I'm glad.
You didn't just get there overnight, right? It took some time.
No, of course not. No.
So for those of you who don't know, Cassandra, she's the CEO of Change Enthusiasm Global. She has helped companies all over the world help change their culture, adapt to any kind of situation they need to adapt to. And she's helping individuals change their mindset when it comes to kind of what's next in growth. We've done your story in the podcast before, but you've been in the middle of all these corporate giants. And when I talked to you, I think it was 2 years ago, the first time. How have you seen life change to the people you're speaking to post-pandemic, post-COVID, post all this stuff?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. It's been a very interesting journey. When the pandemic first started, and that's really when my message and my business really started to take hold and take off, because all of a sudden people were recognizing, oh my goodness, the people that I employ, they're not just human capital. They're actually emotional beings. And I need to understand how to elevate and empower and listen and empathize with these emotional beings. And so the fact that my work rests at the intersection of change and emotion, it was very timely. And I think it's right message, right guide, and the right goods for the time. And so I'm grateful for that. So when that started, the start of the pandemic, it was like, our organization, we're going through so much disruption. We had to send everybody home. They're dealing with remote work. And so it was like, we have this big disruption, or we have this big change, and we need to, enable and empower our employees to move through this really big disruption. And so now the conversation is beginning to change, because the world is now this incredibly volatile, incredibly fast moving, and disruption is like the status quo. It's like people are getting disrupted day after day after day. And it's not only happening for employees inside of the workplace, it's also happening outside of work, right? Just with the ebb and flow and just the way the world is going. And so now it's more of, okay, how do I keep my people change ready? How do I make sure, because I know change is coming. I know that it's going to be constant, and I need them to have the right tools, the mental framework, the skills to be able to navigate change that's going to feel like it's constant.
And it's scary change right now, right? It's a little bit scary change right now because it's technology.
Absolutely. And the technology breakthroughs are coming bigger and faster. Right? These seismic shifts that humanity is experiencing, we're experiencing them on much shorter timelines now. And so now the message is, and it's not like it's changed, the mindset is still the mindset, the skills are still the skills, but it's like, it's now a matter of practice. And so now it's conversations of how do I get a change enthusiasm, learning and development pillar in the core of my business, so that these people are learning this, whether we have a big change initiative happening or not. And I'm grateful for that, because, so often with change management, kind of the realm that I work in, it's like you pull these tools off the shelf when there's an initiative that's coming. Okay, let's get our change management playbook. Let's take it off the shelf, dust it off, learn some things, and then put it back. But now that's not today's reality. That's incomplete.
You're right.
You got to practice it. So that's how I see it changing in that. And I'm thrilled about it. Thrilled.
And I saw you say something recently, and you kind of just put that in the statement you put out, that change has changed.
Change has changed.
Yeah, I like that statement, change it. And, I think people, especially somebody like you, right, who has a voice, what I'm hearing throughout life, besides just what went on with the actors recently with the union strike, as far as like making sure the writers had the writer's strike, that they had rights as far as all this AI stuff that's coming on. I'm hearing it happen in music, which is the same thing. I was talking to somebody the other day who's the head of Latin music at YouTube, and he was just like, yeah, you know, it's a totally different thing, and we have to protect our voices. I think more than anything, how do you do that for yourself? Like, how do you protect your voice so you aren't replaced by some of this stuff, or stop the fear of being replaced by some of the stuff?
Right. Yeah, I love that question. And it's something that's also very relevant in the speaking industry, right? We as thought leaders who were invited on the platforms to share our leading thoughts, are we going to be replaced by, AGI and holograms?
Yeah.
And so I'm staying really in tune with those organizations, those companies that are creating kind of these trademarks or these signatures, right, of the stuff that you create so that this is unique to me. So there's a very practical way that I'm looking at it. But also just thinking about remaining true to who I am. And that's why I so appreciate the compliment at the top of the call.
Yeah.
Is as long as I can let this divinity that flows through me, and I think it flows through all living vessels, allow that to burst forth and allow my light to be as bright as possible, and listen to that intuition and listen to the ideas that flow through me, I think that I'll always have a place in a realm of thought leadership, and always have a place in offering something that's unique and fresh. And I have my work centered in an area that makes we as human beings differentiated versus AI, emotion,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that
yeah,
infinite,
yeah.
that
Sure.
resource that flows through us. So yeah.
And that's interesting because that's a big part. So, and even back to the compliment I gave you at the top, like as far as you being like, you're very, very comfortable in your own skin. How much do you talk to people when it comes to growth or change about their own self-awareness, and how important is that now to kind of keep themselves plugged into?
For me, I think it's more important than ever. There's two elements that I talk about. We teach the mindset of change enthusiasm. We also teach trademark skills that have bubbled up through our global research at that intersection of change and emotion. The mindset is all around emotional self-awareness. It's about being in tune with that emotion that flows through you, being able to name it, to have feeling language, to share vulnerability with your teams, with your organization, and be able to be aware when that emotion is within you, and then have the power to do something that's productive with it, right? To transform the energy. So that emotional self-awareness is massive. And I think it's going to be one of the most important attributes that a leader can possess as we move, forward into the future and whatever that might hold. And then the other one that we teach in our skills is the power of authenticity. We've done research in Western Europe, we've done it in Asia, we've done it in the States, and it ranges anywhere from 70 to 83% of employees would more readily adapt to change when they felt heard and understood by their managers and their peers. Heard and understood, know me. Know my truest emotions, know my challenges, know my ideas, know my perspective. And when you can open that door, when I feel heard, be in my fullest self-expression, I'm going to be ready to jump in, right? All right, we're changing. Let's go. I'm ready for it, because you're letting me shine. You're letting me be me. And so I definitely, that's at the core of what we teach.
It's you saying that kind of spurred another question in my brain, because I know that you don't just teach the companies as a whole or individuals, but you consult for CEOs of major companies. And how are you speaking to them about, because, and this has been going on since forever, right? When I was young, it was always, the older generation was always like, oh, you guys are different. And then when I got into my 20s, it was like, oh, the next generation, the 30s and 40s. But how are you teaching them to bridge the gap between their ideals as an older executive, and most executives are probably in their 40s and 50s in a lot of these older companies, to adapt to the where the youth are today? Because I feel like there's a big divide. And I caught myself saying, I've caught myself saying before, it's like, oh, they're just different. But like, difference shouldn't be bad,
Exactly.
And I've had to adapt my even how I speak to that. I mean, are you kind of trying to help them bridge that gap?
Yeah, and I speak their language, and I hit them exactly where they care about, which is profitability, which is driving out cost and increasing revenue. It's all about numbers, right? And so as you think about the numbers, an employee that goes into an organization that has a culture that doesn't allow them to be their fullest expression, that doesn't allow them to emote and share that emotional energy, and we found in our research that it's very important for younger millennials and Gen Z, and probably Alpha Gen that's coming next, to share those emotions. We have the data to prove it. And if that individual is not seeing that, oh, they will go. they will leave, and we're certainly seeing that in younger generations, and that's a cost to your bottom line to find somebody else to onboard that next person, right? There's dollars that I can attribute to that. And so I like to speak in dollars. I like to speak in the cost of not doing this, the cost of remaining rigid and stuck in your ways versus actually doing it. So that's why we've conducted this research and why we continue to do the research, because it's the numbers that speaks volumes, especially to these individuals who are now in the C-suite, who have grown up in cultures and organizations where they were taught, keep your emotions at the door. Don't bring them in here. They are counterproductive. We have work to do. We have to stay laser focused. And that's just not going to thrive in today's world and moving forward.
That's really powerful. And that's a good way to speak to them, right? Like, you already put all this money into this individual and all this time. Are you going to start over, or are you going to adapt? So that's super powerful. Now, all the research that you're doing, is this something that you've added to your business over the last couple of years? Because I feel like it's different than when we spoke a couple of years ago, where you're depending a lot more on the data that you're getting now, that you have a lot more, probably have a lot bigger client base and a lot bigger network. Are you relying a lot more on data in these situations than you were before?
Absolutely. And that's a learning curve, right? So, before I would come in with my keynote messages, my own personal experience, and then anecdotally how I'd seen the power of the message come to fruition with colleagues, with other clients, and it wasn't getting through, right? It wasn't resonating with those decision makers. And so, you know what? I'm talking about emotions. I'm talking about change and emotions. I need to give them hard, fast data. I need to actually show them the numbers around the world, why this matters and the impact that it can have. And so that's why I made a significant investment in creating this research. And I partnered with the Center for Generational Kinetics. They're called CGK. A good friend of mine, Jason Dorsey, who leads that organization. They're incredible. And they've been great partners in building and nurturing this research. Anyone who's interested, go to changeenthusiasmglobal.com, click the research tab. You can download all the white papers and see how emotion is showing up in the workplace all around the world.
That's really, I mean, it's funny, because your whole business probably wouldn't have existed the way it does now, even 15 years ago, because people just, emotion was kept out of the workplace, right? Like, it's like, leave it at the door. We don't care about your feelings. You don't care about what goes on. Do you feel like us being at home or being more virtual is one of the things that changed that, where, okay, I have to start to look at this? Like, what was the biggest change that brought that, where it's a viable conversation for you to have with these leaders now at this point?
I honestly think it was the pandemic. I say that because that's what I experienced in my business and the nature of my work. I had already been doing a lot of keynote engagements ahead of March of 2020. But it was in March of 2020 that I introduced a brand new keynote speaking reel, sharing the message, really crystallizing what Change Enthusiasm is, a brand new website, really very clear on what it is that I do and why it's the solution that you need. And at the same time, the world was shutting down with the pandemic, and the emotions of all this change happening were running rampant. And leaders were seeing, oh my goodness, everybody is so anxious, everybody's so fearful, I'm feeling it myself. And then when they see me and my, natural enthusiasm, effervescence, and I'm talking about the emotions of change, I'm talking about transforming fear and anxiety into anticipation and hope and gratitude. They're like, yo, that's what I need. That's what my employees need. And so I think the pandemic in many ways opened people's eyes. Like I said, these are emotional beings, and we have all this emotional energy. And my goodness, right now it's holding us back. It's stopping us in our tracks. How can we get this motion forward once more? And so I think it's opened up a lot of conversations related to human skills, as Simon Sinek said, not soft skills. I certainly don't say that they're soft skills, because they are not. They are human skills that are more and more and more important, especially as we think about the breakthrough in AI.
Do you think that, is there something specific that stands out to you when you speak to people or groups or at conferences that you hear over and over from people after they hear you speak as maybe a roadblock that they're having, or something that they weren't accessing, that hearing you say I can really, like, is it something that kind of like is a reoccurring theme that you feel like you hear over and over again?
Two things. Number one, they feel that I granted them permission for the emotions, the feelings that they had been experiencing in their careers. And then I said that it's okay, right? And I shared my own personal journey, and I actually am giving them a framework to allow those emotions to exist. And so many times I have been encountered by attendees, by employees in my client base with this sigh of relief. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the language. Thank you for granting permission for this emotional energy to flow, because I have been holding it all in, and it's been hurting. It's been hurting me, and it's sending me in the downward spiral, and I've been really struggling. But you've given us language and a framework and permission to allow the energy to flow and to transform it in a productive way. So that's one. And then the other is that I always leave them in that seat of choice. And a part of my story is words that I heard from a mentor. She told me you can either get bitter or you can get better. When I was sitting in that struggle,
Yeah, I remember.
when I was sitting in my lowest point in my career, and she said, it's up to you, it's your choice. Now, of course, that really pissed me off, because it's like, no, it's not my choice. You're the director. You're the one that's supposed to do something, not me. But it totally flipped my perspective. And so I share that story in almost every one of my keynote messages, bitter or better. And 9 times out of 10, that is most resonant with attendees. And they're like, you know what? I am in a seat of choice, and it is up to me. Am I going to choose to get bitter, or will I get better? And so that really, really stays with people.
And by the way, you said that to me before, and I remember that line. So it's you're right. It's that kind of something sticks with people, and we're kind of in a strange economy right now where some companies are downsizing. We don't know what's going to happen, inflation, all this other kind of stuff. Do you find that a lot of people are dealing with different kinds of stresses that are keeping their production maybe at a certain level, like you said? Because they're stressed about what's going to happen next. And how do you suggest that people deal with that?
Yeah, so that's dealing with the uncertainty. I'm going to give a plug to a colleague of mine, and she's also a speaker. She's a world-renowned thought leader. She's created something called a flux mindset. And that is, and honestly, it's very congruent and consistent with what change enthusiasm is, but it's sitting in a moment where you see that uncertainty, where you feel the uncertainty, and choosing to see opportunity for growth and learning amongst all of the uncertainty. And so I think the times today is begging of us to trust that with every disruption, everything that feels like it walks in your door, pops you across the face, that type of change you didn't ask for. I just got let go. I know I'm going to be let go from my company. My company is going out of business. Recognizing there's opportunity in this moment for you. And it's up to you to choose how you move forward, how you learn, and how you grow. And so I think all of us are being pushed a bit, being stretched a bit, and allowed to strengthen that level of resiliency, and to trust in our strength and the natural gifts that we're meant to offer the world. And another thing that I talk about so often, especially to employees who have lost their jobs, is transferable skills. Right? Use the things that have gotten you to where you are right now as you think about that next phase in your evolution. Yeah.
That's a really, really good point. Like I had a friend that kind of just went through that in the last couple of weeks, and he's a really high level person to me, but he was in a situation he really had no control in. And instead of just taking the bull by the horns and just, believing in himself and going out on his own, he kind of was playing the game a little bit. And I said to him, I was like, as human beings, I believe that we can get used to anything. And it could be the worst situation in the world when you get used to anything. And I remember back to your story where you were in corporate before you kind of went out on your own, that it was similar in a lot of ways, that you were in a situation, you were dealing with all these mergers of major companies into it. And you were kind of in a situation that you had made yourself used to, but you didn't really like. Like, how do you flip that switch to kind of say like, all right, that's it. My back's against, I'm just going to go do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it wasn't, the reason that I left corporate wasn't because I was disliking it. I certainly had hard times. I certainly had challenges, especially leading the multi-billion-dollar acquisitions that I did. But it was through going through those acquisitions that I actually created and cultivated the mindset of change enthusiasm. And the reason that I left corporate is because I felt the energy of my life pulling me in a different direction, because I knew there was a better way to manage, to empower, to inspire individuals through change than what I had experienced in my corporate life. And I started seeing the results of that by practicing change enthusiasm myself and inspiring others to do it as well. I saw the results and I'm like, you know what? I can package this in a way and teach it to somebody else and help another individual see growth through change instead of just myself. And I always also had kind of this intuition that there was something bigger, there's something better that you need to use your talents, your gifts, and your skills for. And it was just taking one foot over the other, step after step. And eventually that next step was sunsetting my corporate career as I had known it and starting my entrepreneurial pursuits full time.
It's interesting how you stated that, because I feel like I've said this to myself a million times and I say it to other people. We all have, like, I feel like two feelings inside of us. And one feeling is there's something really special about me that's different from everybody else. And the other feeling is that I'm not good enough and it's never going to happen for me. And it's right? Like, it sounds like change enthusiasm is almost embracing I'm special. Like, and that it's not like it can happen for me, but I have to make it happen, right?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And it's again, that trust that you're meant to do it. You're meant to be in the moment that you're in, and listening, right, to this divinity. I know I keep talking about that divine energy, but
I love that though.
I firmly believe that I'm at where I am right now in my business and my work and the work that I do all around the world because of the co-creation that I've done with the divinity that flows through me. I have not done this alone. I have most certainly not done this alone. And when I can lean on that divinity, knowing that we're in co-creation from it, I always hear, no, this is the path. Yes, it's tough, but keep walking, keep stepping. This is what you're supposed to do. And I listen to that. And often it speaks to me in a feeling. It speaks to me in a feeling. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you started something that I'd like you to touch on that I know is coming. It's a change revolution.
Yes.
I'd like you to kind of just let the audience know, maybe kind of preview to them what's going to happen and how they can participate and contribute and get involved.
For sure. I appreciate that. So historically or up to date, all of the work that we have done has all been B2B, right? So we engage with clients, we go in and we train, create learning experiences for their organization, bring in change enthusiasm, and our flagship Change Growth Accelerator learning experience to their organization. Well, in the back half of this year, we are actually moving or expanding to a B2C model. And we're going to be offering this life-changing Change Growth Accelerator learning experience to the masses, whether you're in a company and the company is paying for it or not. And so we want to make it accessible to all. And so we are launching an anthem for all of our change enthusiasts all around the world. And as a part of that, you can actually opt in to be one of the first to get notified when our Change Growth Accelerator for everyone becomes available. So I'm super, super excited about it. Accessibility is so very important for me. I don't want all of this knowledge to be limited just to those individuals working in big corporations and big corporations that have said yes to bringing in Change Enthusiasm Global. And so I'm going to, you're going to be able to sign up and have this experience no matter where you sit, no matter where you are.
That's awesome. You're going to reach a lot more people, obviously, which is the greatest part about the message. So I just want to say to the audience, Cassandra's episode is going to be airing on Disruptors Network Season 2, February 8th. It's Thursday. That's the day it's going to preview, and then you're going to see it throughout. The other thing I want to speak about a little bit is when I first met you, I read your book. It had just come out when I first met you, and it's called Change Enthusiasm. And it's amazing. It was I'm a reader. I like to read, but it was a really easy read. It's something that you really should attach to your life, because it gave me kind of you said at the beginning, I think it's so powerful. You said that you give people permission to bring their emotions into the rest of their life, and whether it's work or whatever, right? So I think that's awesome. So definitely pick up her book. Is there anything else you have going on that everybody should know about right now?
The biggest one, honestly, is the Anthem campaign. Be on the lookout. You'll get on my socials. Ralph is going to be sharing it as well. We've got a lot of other affiliates that are going to be sharing it. We're going to launch it the week of February 12th. And so make sure you join the movement and get opted in so you can be one of the first when the Change Growth Accelerator comes to the masses.
Yeah, and you're awesome. And Cassandra's socials are all Cassandra worthy. She's very, very easy to find. We'll get them up on the screen in the podcast notes. Everybody can see them. But I thank you again for coming on. You're always so giving of your time, and I really, really appreciate that. And you're going to love your episode. I haven't watched the whole thing because I want to be surprised, but I've watched snippets of it because they asked me to, and it's awesome. So you're going to be really excited when you see your episode, and I'm happy for everybody else to see it. Excited for everybody else to see it.
I'm excited too. Thank you so much, Ralph, for all you do and all you are. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you again, Cassandra.